How many times have you caught yourself saying, "This time it will work"? Maybe it was on that January 1st when you promised to change your life, or on that Monday when you decided you would start waking up early, working out, reading, learning something new, transforming your routine. And for a few days, you were truly impeccable. You felt invincible, motivated, as if nothing could stop you. But then came the stumble. A bad day at work, a sleepless night, a fatigue you couldn't explain. You skipped one day, just one, then another. And when you realized it, everything was back to how it was before. As always, the cycle restarted. And along with it, that old poisonous phrase, "I lack discipline." But what if I told you that the problem was never your willpower? What if the blame wasn't on you, but on the very model you learned about change? Because the brutal truth is, you were taught to fail. The productivity industry, stagecoaches, the "you-can-do-it" gurus promised you consistency through motivation. And that's a trap, because motivation is like the weather. It changes, fluctuates, disappears. It is not reliable. It is not constant. And if you depend on it to transform your life, you are building a castle on sand. You don't need more willpower. You need a different model, one that respects how your brain actually works, one that doesn't require heroism, but intelligence, one that takes into account that you are not a robot programmed to function perfectly every day, but a biological organism trying to survive by conserving energy and repeating what is already familiar. And this is where science comes in. B.J. Fogg, a professor at Stanford University, has spent decades studying what really works when it comes to forming habits. And the answer is so simple, it seems absurd. The secret to consistency is to start so small that your brain can't say no. Micro-actions, tiny behaviors, absurdly easy and rewarding. Not because they will take you straight to the end result, but because they teach your brain to desire repetition, to associate the act with pleasure, to release dopamine every time you complete something, no matter how small. You are not lazy. You are just trying to change with the wrong tools. In this video, I will show you how to reprogram your brain to love consistency, not by forcing discipline, but by creating a system that makes your body and mind work in your favor. It doesn't matter how many times you've tried and failed. What you will learn here can forever transform the way you build habits, but only if you are willing to abandon everything you have been taught so far. If you are tired of feeling like a failure for not being able to maintain discipline, stay with me, because this journey is not about becoming stronger, it's about becoming smarter. Let's get started. Since we were little, we have been conditioned to believe that motivation is the force that moves the world, that to change, all you need is to want it enough. If you have the will, you can do it. That's what we are told, by teachers, parents, self-help books, lectures. And for a while, this idea even seems to work. You feel the impulse, the initial energy, that euphoria of starting something new. The brain floods the body with dopamine. The feeling of purpose envelops you, and you truly believe that this time, it will be different. But what happens next? Days go by. The routine returns. The obligations, the fatigue, the distractions. That initial enthusiasm evaporates. And suddenly, what seemed simple becomes a burden. Just today I won't, you think, and that just today becomes the beginning of the end. Not because you are weak, but because motivation was never meant to last. It is a chemical peak, not a foundation. It is a volatile fuel, not a permanent engine. B.J. Fogg explains that motivation is an extremely unstable element. It rises and falls according to mood, sleep, diet, and circumstances. It is emotional, not logical. And if your change system relies on it, you are doomed to fail. It's like trying to cross the ocean in a paper boat. The first wind destroys it. The truth is that relying on motivation is like handing your life over to a momentary state of the brain. One day you are inspired, the next, exhausted. One day you want to change the world, the next, you just want to sleep. And that's okay. That's human. The mistake is believing that this transient state can sustain long-term transformation. Think about it. When you try to change a behavior solely with willpower, what you are really doing is fighting against your own biology. The brain is designed to conserve energy, avoid pain, and repeat what is familiar. This means it will resist any change that requires continuous effort. So, when you try to be disciplined by forcing big habits like waking up 2 hours earlier, going to the gym 5 times a week, studying 3 hours a day, you are waging a war against the very system that controls your behavior. And who always wins this war? The brain. The central point of Fogg's work is this: motivation is overrated. And this is the reason why most people fail to create consistency. When you rely on emotion to act, you create a dangerous pattern. You start with intensity and end with guilt. It's the cycle of self-sabotage disguised as effort. Every time you try and fail, you reinforce a failure identity. I am not disciplined. I never finish anything. Maybe I wasn't born for this. But none of this is true. You are just trying to change with the wrong fuel. Imagine if instead of punishing yourself for lack of motivation, you could design a system that works even on days when you feel no desire at all. A model that transforms actions into automations and that, over time, makes the act of being consistent as natural as breathing. That is the turning point. It's where we stop blaming our mind and start understanding it. And to do this, we need to understand the true mechanism that governs human behavior. It's time to learn about what B.J. Fogg called the behavior model, the model that explains why you do or don't do anything in your life. And that's exactly what we will talk about in the next part. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. If you really want to change, and not just for a few days, then you need to stop seeking willpower and start designing behaviors. And that's exactly what B.J. Fogg discovered through decades of research at Stanford. Every human behavior is the result of the convergence of 3 elements. 3 and only 3. And if any of them is missing, the action does not happen. This is called the Fogg behavior model, B-MAP. What does this mean? That a behavior only occurs when motivation, ability, and prompt, or trigger, come together at the same time. Let's translate this to real life. Think of something simple, like brushing your teeth. You probably don't need to think much to do it. Motivation might even be low, you might be sleepy, tired, but the ability is high, you know exactly how to do it, and the prompt is automatic, waking up or going to sleep. Result: the behavior happens. Now compare this to something you're trying to implement, like daily meditation. Maybe the motivation is there at the beginning, but the ability, you might still be learning. And the prompt, probably non-existent. Without all 3 together, the habit doesn't form. This model changes everything. It frees you from the lie that you need to be inspired to act. It shows you that, in fact, the smartest path is to remove as much friction as possible, because the easier the behavior is, the lower the skill requirement, the less motivation you need to perform it. And the clearer the trigger is, the more automatic the action becomes. It's behavioral math. And it works. Most people fail because they try to act only when motivation is high, ignoring the other 2 pillars. It's like trying to drive a car with 2 flat tires just because the tank is full. It doesn't matter how much motivation you have if the behavior is too difficult or if you don't have a trigger to initiate the action. Motivation alone is not enough. You need a system. And the brilliance of this model is its simplicity. If you want to create a new habit, ask yourself, do I really have motivation for this? Is it easy enough to do even when tired, stressed, or unwilling? Is there a clear and specific trigger that reminds me to do this? If the answer is no to any of these points, the behavior will not happen. Not because you are lazy, but because your brain is just following its own rules. And here's the crucial point. When you adjust this system, not with effort, but with smart design, you start to create habits that sustain themselves even on the worst days. You begin to hack behavior, and with that, consistency stops being a torture and becomes something natural, fluid, automatic. But how to make all this practical? How to translate this model into real, daily, possible actions? How to move from theory to application in everyday life? That's where the next part comes in. The power of tiny habits. Absurdly small behaviors that seem insignificant, but have the power to reprogram your brain and transform your life at its core. Get ready to discover the true key to consistency. What would happen if, instead of trying to transform your life all at once, you started with something so small that your brain couldn't resist? It sounds silly, doesn't it? We have been trained to believe that only the grand is worth it, that success requires extreme sacrifice, pain, sweat, and heroism. No pain, no gain. That is the narrative modern culture sells, and it is also the reason why almost everyone gives up halfway. Because the truth is that the human brain was not programmed to handle internal revolutions. It resists big changes, not because you are weak, but because it understands that change costs energy. And the brain, biologically, is a natural saver. It seeks to automate behaviors and avoid effort. So when you try to change everything at once, you are basically telling your nervous system, get ready to suffer. And it, like any organism that wants to survive, says no. B.J. Fogg understood this masterfully. He realized that transformation does not start with discipline, but with design, and that the most efficient way to trick this internal resistance is to make the behavior so small, so ridiculously easy, that there is no room for rejection. Want to start exercising? Don't promise an hour of workout. Just promise to put on your sneakers. Want to start writing? Don't vow to write an entire chapter, just one sentence. Want to meditate? Just sit down and take 3 deep breaths. That's it. Just that. These micro-actions seem insignificant, and that's exactly why they work. They go unnoticed by the radar of resistance. Your brain doesn't perceive a threat. It thinks, oh, this is easy. I can do this. And when you do, something powerful happens. The brain releases dopamine, the neurotransmitter of pleasure, motivation, and learning. This small chemical release creates a positive association with the behavior. And guess what that means? That you will want to repeat it. You literally start teaching your brain to love consistency. This is how the reprogramming process begins. What was once effort becomes desire. What was once obligation becomes pleasure. Small behaviors generate small victories, and small victories fuel big transformations. Fogg calls this the success momentum, the virtuous cycle in which each successful micro-action strengthens the identity of who you are becoming. Change ceases to be an event and transforms into a natural process. And here's the most counterintuitive detail. When you start small, you grow fast. Because small is sustainable. Small is repeatable. Small does not depend on motivation, only on intention. And when you repeat the small every day, it stops being an effort and becomes a part of your identity. You are not just creating habits, you are rewriting who you are. Think about it. You don't need to turn into an athlete to go to the gym, nor a monk to meditate. You just need to start with something so ridiculous that failure is impossible. Because the secret of change is not intensity, it's continuity. And continuity comes from the micro. But there is an even deeper secret within this method, a 3-step system that combines neuroscience and behavior to transform small actions into automatic circuits within your brain. It's the mechanism that truly makes you love consistency. Imagine that you could reprogram your brain to desire consistency in the same way it desires sugar, social media, or binge-worthy series. Sounds impossible? It's not. This is exactly what BJ Fogg's method proposes, and it works because it respects the rules of the brain's reward system. The difference is that instead of fighting against your impulses, you intelligently redirect them. The process is built on 3 fundamental elements, which function as a behavioral re-engineering system: anchoring, tiny behavior, and immediate celebration. And when these 3 elements are applied together, you are not just building habits. You are literally redesigning the dopamine circuits in your brain. Let's start with anchoring. Anchoring means connecting the new habit to an action you already perform every day without thinking, something automatic, routine, solid. It could be brushing your teeth, having coffee, locking the door, or even sitting on the toilet. The goal here is to hijack an established behavior to serve as a trigger for the new habit. This creates a neurological link between something familiar and something new. The result? The brain stops treating the new as a threat and starts treating it as an extension of what it already knows. It's as if you're telling your nervous system, hey, relax, this is already part of the routine. The second pillar is tiny behavior. If you still think that picking up the guitar or putting on your shoes is too little, you are still stuck in the myth of big action. Fogg has proven with data and experience that what creates consistency is not the magnitude of the act, but the frequency with which it is repeated effortlessly. The habit only solidifies when your brain perceives it as easy, manageable, and above all, safe. A tiny behavior is so easy that it borders on ridiculous, and that's exactly why it overcomes procrastination, fear, perfectionism, and internal resistance. And then we come to the third element, perhaps the most overlooked of all: immediate celebration. This is the most powerful neural trick of the method. Right after performing the behavior, no matter how small, you need to celebrate. Not passively, but actively and deliberately. It could be an enthusiastic yes, a proud smile, a small victory gesture. Does it seem childish? It might. But we are not trying to convince your ego. We are programming your limbic system, and the limbic system understands dopamine. Active celebration triggers a positive emotional release, reinforcing the association between the behavior and pleasure. Over time, your brain starts to crave repeating that behavior because it has learned that it generates an immediate emotional reward. That's the secret. You are not trying to force discipline. You are teaching your brain to desire consistency. By repeating the cycle of anchoring, micro-action, and celebration, you build a neural network that transforms the habit into identity. You stop being someone who tries to be consistent and become someone who is consistent. This process does not require superhuman effort, nor does it demand that you be strong every day. It only requires strategy. It is design, not sacrifice. When you understand this, you begin to see that the path to great changes is not paved with promises and frustrations, but with micro-actions celebrated daily. But what then? What happens when you repeat a small behavior every day, for weeks, with pleasure? It becomes automatic. And when it becomes automatic, you are free. It no longer depends on motivation, discipline, or mental energy. The habit settles in. Consistency becomes a habit, a good habit built with science. And that's exactly what you will discover in the next part. How to make consistency so natural, so rewarding, that it literally becomes addictive. If what you're hearing resonates with you, you'll find real value in my ebooks. Beyond the Shadow breaks down Jung's core ideas, while Dialogues with the Unconscious gives you a 30-day path to apply them in your life. Both are linked in the pinned comment. Have you ever stopped to think about why it's so easy to repeat certain behaviors, even when they harm you? While it seems almost impossible to maintain habits that would clearly do you good? Why can you scroll through your phone's feed for an hour without even realizing it, but can't meditate for 5 minutes? The answer lies in your brain's reward system. And the truth is, it doesn't care about what is right or healthy. It only responds to one question. Does this give me immediate pleasure? Dopamine, the neurotransmitter of motivation, learning, and repetition, is not released because something is important, profound, or necessary. It is released when you feel you have completed something. And that's why destructive habits like compulsively checking your phone, eating junk food, or procrastinating are so addictive. They deliver an immediate action-reward cycle. The brain thinks, I did something, I was rewarded, I want to repeat. It's that simple. Now, here's the powerful insight. You can use that same system to create a habit of consistency. And no, it's not willpower, it's not military discipline. It's applied neuroscience. When you create tiny, easy-to-complete habits anchored in existing actions and immediately celebrated, you are activating that same dopaminergic circuit that makes you addicted to social media. Only this time, the target is not distraction, it's progress. It's the micro-commitment fulfilled. It's the feeling of, I did what I set out to do. Over time, this cycle strengthens. With each small victory, your brain learns, being consistent, I feel good. And when this repeats for days, then weeks, something profound begins to change. You not only do the habit, you start to desire to do it. The behavior that once required effort now generates pleasure. Consistency stops being an obligation and becomes an identity. You no longer need to force yourself to be disciplined. You want to be. You enjoy being. Your brain has been reprogrammed to desire what it once avoided. Think of it as building a behavioral muscle. At first, each repetition seems too light to make a difference, but over time, the accumulation of these micro-actions creates a foundation so solid that it becomes unshakable. What was once an internal struggle turns into flow. What was once resistance turns into momentum. And the most amazing part, this works even on bad days. Because the habit is so small and so pleasurable that neither stress, fatigue, nor lack of motivation can stop you from fulfilling it. And when you fulfill it, even on the worst days, you win. You reinforce your identity of consistency, and your brain rewards you for it. That's how you create a positive addiction. That's how you teach your nervous system to desire discipline without suffering. It's not a matter of talent nor personality. It's a matter of internal engineering, a dance between habit and pleasure, a new relationship between action and reward. And now that you understand how this process transforms effort into momentum, it's time to take the final step. Learn to apply this system in real life, in the projects you abandoned, in the habits you always wanted to cultivate but never managed to maintain. Because the next part will show you exactly that, how to apply this method practically and strategically to restart and succeed at what you've tried 1,000 times, this time with science on your side. Have you ever tried to change with effort? Have you tried with promises, with grand goals, with colorful planners, with that feeling of this time it will work? Have you tried to force yourself, to blame yourself, to compare yourself? Have you started strong and ended up exhausted? But now you know the truth. The problem was never you. The problem was the model you were taught. You were trained to rely on motivation, to seek willpower as if it were a muscle, when in fact it is a volatile resource. And what BJ Fogg has shown us, with science, with data, with practice, is that consistency is not a matter of strength. It's a matter of design. You don't need to change your entire life at once. You don't need to become another person overnight. You just need to learn to design behaviors that work even on bad days. Behaviors that your brain doesn't reject because they are small, enjoyable, and anchored in what you already do. You don't need to fight against yourself. You can use what is already automatic to your advantage. Now think of all those projects you abandoned, all the goals that fell by the wayside, the gym, the unfinished book, the morning routine that never took off, the language you promised to learn. What if you started again, but this time, intelligently? What if instead of promising to train for 1 hour, you just put on your sneakers? What if, instead of trying to write 3 pages a day, you wrote just 1 sentence? And what if, upon completing these micro-actions, you celebrated as if you had conquered the world? You wouldn't be faking progress. You would be programming your brain to desire consistency, to make the habit irresistible. This is not self-help. This is neuroengineering. And when you apply this method with patience and persistence, something changes. You start small and end big. You gain momentum, identity, transformation. The discipline you were seeking all along doesn't come from strength. It comes from well-constructed behavioral architecture. So here's a challenge. Choose a habit you want to cultivate. Just one. Make it tiny. Anchor it to something you already do. And when you complete it, celebrate as if you've won a battle. Do this for 7 days. And then come back here and tell me in the comments what changed. You will be surprised. Your brain will be surprised. If this video brought you clarity, if it made you see yourself differently, leave a comment saying which habit you will start today. Small, simple, non-negotiable. And if this content helped you, like, share, and subscribe to the channel. This helps YouTube understand that this type of reflection needs to reach more people. But most importantly, it ensures that you will continue receiving content like this, made to provoke, to challenge, and to transform. And don't stop here. The next video is an important continuation of this journey. If you are serious about changing, about understanding your mind more deeply, and building a life with more awareness and freedom, you need to see what comes next. I'll see you there.